Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning on this first spring Monday of 2021. My name is Victoria Rogers. I'm with the Greater Scranton Chamber of Commerce. I am the Membership and Community Relations Specialist. And today we have a special speaker. She's been with them for 21 years, Kathy Van Valen. She is with the PA State Department of Labor and Industry. And we're going to talk about UC 101, which is the employer unemployment compensation benefits and basically how it all works. We were talking before we came on here, and she had a lot of experience and did say that last year was the biggest increase she's seen in all of her years there. So Kathy, thank you so much for being with us, and we're all interested to see what you have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. As you were just told, my name is Kathy. I'm going to be going through a PowerPoint presentation, UC 101, Employer Unemployment Compensation Benefits, how it all works. And we'll be going over quite a few topics through this. If at any time you have a question, just type it into the chat and then we can address it. I can address general questions during the presentation. If you have a specific question about a specific individual, I would ask that you email me your question after we're done, because I would have to go into the system and look up information on that in order to give you a complete answer. In that case, you should always include the claimant's full name and the last four of their social security number so I can find them in the system. I believe they're going to put my email address in the chat for you so that you have that available. Getting started with the UC 101. First thing I'm going to go over is the agenda. There's some basics here that we go over first. How we determine how much people can get and what the base year is that we have to use by law to determine that. How much has to be earned outside the highest quarter, all about credit weeks and claim duration. And what do we mean when we use the term 6 times? It's actually used in a couple of different places, so that can get confusing if you're not used to the system. The weekly benefit rate and how we determine that, what partial unemployment is and when can people collect on that. Some information about how you file your biweekly claim and what the waiting week is, and why you need to be able and available for work in order to collect unemployment. And then also employee UC requirements while filing for benefits, and what's a contributing employer versus a reimbursable employer. Then we get into some other things like opening up a UC claim, what the employee and the employer gets from us once that claim is open, how we do fact finding if there is an issue on the claim, monthly and yearly UC mailings, miscellaneous mailings, a lot about employer contact information, and a lot of information on the new programs that have come into effect through 2020 and 2021. The most recent one I don't even have on the PowerPoint, but I can give you some basics on the American Rescue Plan at the end and what we're looking at as far as extensions at this point. So the basics, how financial eligibility is determined. The first thing for anyone that's filing a claim or looking for a claim is determining whether or not they're financially eligible. Once they're financially eligible, then we can look at, is there reason for separation and eligibility issue? Okay. So basically, to be financially eligible for benefits, we look at the amount of money that's paid to the employee by all employers covered by UC law in the base year. And the base year is the time period that consists of the first 4 of the last 5 completed calendar quarters prior to the quarter in which the claim was filed. So right now, if someone was filing a claim, we are currently in March, so we're still in January, February, and March of the year. And if you look at your screen here, I don't know if you can see my little laser pointer there, but January, February, March. So the base year would be October of the year before last through September of last year. So right now, we're looking at October of 2019 through September of 2020 as the base year period. There's always a quarter, a lag quarter, that we're not using. And the reason for that is we need the employers to report their wages so we can put them into wage record. So that lag quarter gives us time to get that information into the system. So we're not doing a lot of monetary investigations and trying to find the most recent wages. Because if someone filed the first week of January, well, their December wages won't be in yet. So another thing is, how much did they earn outside their high quarter during that period? So to be eligible, a person needs to have earned at least 37% of their total wages outside of their high quarter. Now, the way we figure this out is we take all 4 quarters of the base year and we add it together. And then we multiply that by 37%. And then we take away whichever quarter is highest out of those 4, and we add up the 3 lower quarters, and that needs to equal or exceed the 37% of the total base year amount. So to make it real simple on this example here, I do a total base year earnings of $10,000. We know 37% of $10,000 is $3,700. So it makes the math pretty simple. We have 2 examples here, example A and B. Now, example A is eligible because if we took away the high quarter, the $6,000, they still have $4,000 left in their base year, and $4,000 is greater than the $3,700. Example B, same total amount of wages in the base year, $10,000. The 1 quarter is $7,000. That's the high quarter, so we take that away. Then we have left $3,000. Well, $3,000 is less than $3,700, so that person would be ineligible for UC benefits at that time, if that was their base year. Any questions so far? Alrighty, moving on to credit weeks and claim duration. Additionally, the employee must satisfy the credit weeks requirements. Pennsylvania is one of the few states that still has credit weeks. Basically, a credit week is a week in which they earned at least $116, okay? And that's based off of the minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. So an employee would need to have a minimum of 18 credit weeks in their base year in order to be eligible for any amount of benefits, okay? They can have anywhere from 18 plus. They get 1 week of UC benefits for each week they have, up to the maximum of 26 weeks. So if they have 18 weeks, they get 18 weeks of benefits, 19 weeks of benefits. But if they have 50 weeks credit weeks, they still only get 26 weeks because that's the maximum amount they can get from regular unemployment. And that's without any extensions or anything else that's in play. So a claimant would have 52 calendar weeks from the application of the date of the claim available to claim available benefits. So the claim lasts for 1 full year, 52 weeks, but there's only enough money on the claim for at max 26 full weeks of benefits. Some people get confused. They said, well, my claim's supposed to be open for a year. Well, yes, but the balance on the claim can run out. I equate it to a checking account. There's this much money in it. When the money's gone, yeah, the claim is still there. It's still in the system, but you can't get any more money out of it. So what do we mean when we talk about 6 times? Well, there's a couple of places. We use 6 times. We might ask the employer, did the claimant earn at least this amount of money while they were working for you? And that amount is usually that 6 times amount, which is 6 times their weekly benefit rate. The reason why we need to know that is if they did not earn 6 times at the most recent employer, we may need to go back to the separation with the prior employer and write a determination on that. Just 1 second, someone's calling me. Close that out. All righty. So if they had not earned that 6 times with that most recent employer, we might need to do that backward figuring and actually write determinations. I had one claimant years ago when I first started that we had to go through 8 employers before we got to an employer where they actually earned 6 times, which means on that claim, we actually had to write 8 different determinations in order to see if this person was eligible. Also, to qualify for a new UC claim on a back-to-back claim. Let's say they opened up a claim of July of this year, and they're opening up a claim in July of next year. That's what we would consider like a back-to-back claim. They would, from July of this year to July of next year, had to have earned at least 6 times their weekly benefit rate to qualify. Because of the way our base year works, oftentimes there are 2 quarters of wages still sitting after the person is laid off. But if they haven't worked anywhere else at all, they can't get a new claim. They need to have earned at least that 6 times between claims. Moving on to the weekly benefit rate. An employee's weekly benefit rate is the amount they can receive if eligible for UC benefits for a week, and the benefits are not reduced for any reason. Reasons they can be reduced can be like pensions, or if they have a sideline business or something like that. Now, our weekly rates can range anywhere from $68 to $583 per week. To qualify for the minimum amount, they would need to have total base year wages of at least $2,718 with a high quarter of $1,688. If someone is no longer working and they did not have a high quarter of at least $1,688, they wouldn't qualify for anything in UC benefits. Now, to qualify for the maximum of $583, they would need a total base year earnings of at least $23,512 with a high quarter of $14,813. So you can see how we estimate that. The employee's weekly benefit rate should be about equal to 50% of their gross wages, but it will max out at that 583. There are financial charts online at our website. If you wanted to actually see the charts, you can go to the uc.pa.gov and just look for weekly benefit rate computations, and it should pull up the link. Anytime you go on our website, there's a search box. I find that's the easiest way to find stuff. Just type in what you're generally looking for, and usually it'll hit close. If there's something you can't find, you can always send me an email, and I would look it up for you and send it to you or show you where it is. Any questions so far? All righty. So partial unemployment. Partial unemployment, maybe instead of laying someone off, you've reduced hours. So an employee can work part-time and earn up to 30% of their weekly benefit rate in each claim week before their earnings affect their weekly benefit payment. The 30% is known as the partial benefit credit. Any amount that they earn over the partial benefit credit in a week will be deducted from their weekly benefit rate. So in this example, we'll use a weekly benefit amount of $300 a week, which will give a partial benefit credit of $90 a week. So if the claimant works and earns equal to or less than $90, they'll receive their full benefit of $300. There would be no deduction because they earn less than that partial benefit credit. But if the claimant works and earns more than the partial benefit credit, the difference will be subtracted from the weekly benefit rate. So let's say the claimant worked part-time and earned $200. The difference between the 90 and the 200 is 110. So in this case, the claimant would receive benefits of $190. That's the 300 minus the 110. So that's basically how that partial benefit credit can work with partial unemployment. The good thing is they're taking the money out of their claim at a slower rate. So instead of getting 26 full weeks of benefits, they might get 30, 35 until that money runs out. So biweekly claims and the waiting week. Anytime someone files for unemployment, they have to file biweekly to file for the actual weeks. A lot of people think once they file for the claim, money should just start coming. Well, besides filing the claim, they need to answer questions about each individual week once it is passed in order to receive benefits for that week. Okay. So usually they do this on a bi-weekly system. Generally, they'll file for 2 claims at one time. They file for 2 weeks, but they file individually for each week. First, they'll answer questions about week 1, and then they'll answer questions about week 2. Now, the first week of the benefit year that the employee is unemployed and otherwise eligible for benefits, that is called the waiting week. Right now, the waiting week is waived because of our current situation, but normally that waiting week is an unpaid week. So usually the first week that they're eligible to collect benefits is that waiting week. Okay. I don't know when that's going to be coming back. Probably not at least until September, I would guess, since the latest American Rescue Plan runs to that point. Now, for a week to serve as the waiting week, the employee needs to be entitled to receive a payment. So they'd have to be eligible to receive at least $1 from unemployment compensation in order for the week to count as a waiting week. Now, what do we mean when we say able and available for work? Well, compensation shall be payable to any employee who is or becomes unemployed and is able to work and available for suitable work. What is suitable work? Any kind of work they can do. The employee must prove a realistic attachment to the local labor market as indicated by the employee's readiness, willingness, and ability to accept some substantial and suitable work. With everything going on with COVID, being able to work from home makes you able and available. Now, the employee must certify that she is able to accept and is available for suitable work during each week for which she files a claim for benefits. 2 of the major circumstances we see around able and available is A, sickness. If someone is ill and is not allowed to work at all, the doctor says they cannot work at all, well, then they should not be filing for unemployment because unfortunately you do have to be able and available for some kind of work in order to collect unemployment. And if they take a vacation, if they're gone away on vacation for 2 weeks, even if they were laid off prior to that, during that vacation time, they shouldn't collect benefits because they're not able and available for work. They're on vacation. They're not in Florida looking for work. They're wherever they are on vacation. So they would not be eligible for benefits. But as soon as they came back from vacation, they could restart their claim and continue filing. Alrighty, anyone collecting unemployment compensation without a recall date to return to work in writing is required to register for employment search services through PA CareerLink. This is also something that is currently waived right now with everything going on with COVID. But I do hear rumors that they are talking of bringing it back in the near future. Exactly when, I don't know at this point. So they need to file with the CareerLink. And that's an online thing. So they don't actually have to go to the CareerLink to do it. But it's just registering with the CareerLink. It's filling out a basic form if they have not done it already with the CareerLink. They are also required to do weekly work searches or work search activities starting with the 3rd week of the claim. This is also currently waived, but I am hearing rumors that it should be coming back at some point in the near future. So if you are reducing your workforce either temporarily or permanently, use the Form 1609 will help your employees to file correctly. Now, the Form 1609 is available on our website. If you just type in the search box 1609, it'll pull it up for you. And I have a picture here of what the 1609 looks like. The top section is very general information. It'll be the same for every employee. So you could pre-fill this part out for them. It's your employer UC account number. If you're not sure of your account number, send me an email and I can get you that account number. Just include your FEIN, and that way I'll be able to pull up, make sure I get the correct account number for you. A lot of times you might know most of the digits, but you'll be missing this last digit. Normally it's a 0, but it can be a letter upon occasion. So, if you don't know that last digit, just send it to me and I can find it for you. And the employer's information, their name and the address that they want their unemployment paperwork going to. And a lot of people, they know where they work and they think any mail related to that should go to that spot. But as you know, sometimes you have third-party people like Talks, UC Express, things like that, and you want that information to go to them. So by filling this out, hopefully the employee will give us the correct information. Normally we get it in a cross match, and can fix it. But this way, if they're using it upfront correctly, we have less issues. And then the second part here is if you're giving them a recall date. In that case, you put the employee's name, the last four of their social security number, the expected date of recall, and sign-in date. And that gives them their in writing recall notice without you having to do a letter or something else up. If they have that recall notice, then they don't have to do those weekly work searches when they're in effect. So, they're not looking for other work and they're going to be there when you call them back. One other thing with that is we don't hold you to that date. Some people think if I put that date down, what happens if I can't bring them back at that date? Well, if there's a delay in getting something in or, in starting if the weather's bad or something, that's okay. You just give them another one with the new date. It's not a big deal. We understand that dates can change because no one can see into the future. Are there any questions to this point? So what is a contributory versus a reimbursable employment? All right. So employment is covered under the Pennsylvania UC law. Employers are responsible for UC coverage of their employees as a contributing employer. That's like 95% of employers are contributing employers. However, there are some political subdivisions and certain nonprofit employers that have a choice of two methods of financing this coverage. They can either do contributory or reimbursable. A lot of school districts, cities, nonprofits are reimbursable. And the difference is a contributory employer pays contributions, based on a taxable wage base paid annually to each employer. I believe currently it's like of the first $10,000 earned, a certain amount goes into their unemployment fund. Now, reimbursable employers may elect, if qualified, to reimburse the UC fund the amount of the benefits chargeable to their account. So they don't prepay in. What they do is they reimburse dollar for dollar anything that's paid out on their account. So for additional information on reimbursable employers, you can go to the website, uc.pa.gov. There's actually a handbook for reimbursable employers on there. So if you are a reimbursable employer and would like that, like I said, just go on the website, in the search bar, type reimbursable employer, and it should pull up that handbook as one of the options for you. And you can click on that and have that. So what happens when someone opens a UC claim? Well, the first person we always usually talk to is the claimant, because they're the ones opening the claim. Until they open the claim, we have no business with what's going on. Okay. It's once they open the claim that, then based on law, we might need additional information and have to do determinations. So unemployment compensation refers to these workers as claimants. So if I use the word claimant, it's your worker. It's just how we refer to them. So an employee can file an application during the first week he or she works less than their normal full-time hours. If they delay filing, they may not backdate the claim for them. So they should try to file that very first week. Applications can be filed either online at uc.pa.gov, or they can call into the service center Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the 888-313-7284. As I was talking earlier, last week, we answered somewhere in the range of like 35,000 calls. So it is busy. It's still busy. But be persistent. Think of it like a radio call-in show. Remember those? You keep hitting redial if you can't get through. And sometimes there's a wait time, a hold time while you're in the queue. But we do try to get to as many calls as we can during the week. A great employee handout for employees is the UC 98, which is the Online is Easy. It basically explains how to file the claim online. And it is really a nice guide, and that can be found at our website. Once again, in the search box, just type UC-98 and it'll pull it up. You can print it out, and it's just a 2-page little thing that you can fold into a little booklet. So once the employee files their claim, within 10 to 12 days, they start receiving information from us. They would receive the claim confirmation letter. It says basically, hey, you filed a claim on this date, and it'll give them their personal identification number or PIN number, and it would give them their payment option information regarding both the debit card and direct deposit. They may receive a U.S. Bank Reliant card, and debit card is our default method of payment. If they've already received the debit card, or if already have direct deposit set up within the last 2 years, then they may not get that debit card. The Unemployment Compensation Handbook, and this explains all their rights and responsibilities while claiming unemployment. They have switched this up a little bit. If they're filing online, there's an electronic handbook online for them to use. If they file over the phone, they'll actually get mailed a hard copy. And the Notice of Financial Determination. This specifically informs the employee of their financial eligibility for benefits. And it's similar to the financial form employers get, except it would have all employers in the base year listed on the claimant version, whereas the employer version would only have that employer's wages during the base year listed. This is an appealable determination. So if they think anything is incorrect on there, or if there's missing wages or anything like that, they should let us know within 15 days so we can do a monetary investigation and get it corrected. So immediately after the claim is open, there are forms that are mailed out to the employer. Of those forms is the UC 45, 45A, 785. It's sent out in 3 different situations. That's why it has 3 different numbers. And it's basically a notification of the claim and a request for separation and wage information. That's the form that used to be yellow, all right? They've switched it, and all our forms are now just one color white. We're not using colored paper anymore. It was to save money, but that form does come out. So you might remember the yellow form and realize, hey, this form's white now. So The UC 44F3, which is a notice of financial determination, the UC 44FR, which is a request for relief from charges. You'll get this if you are a contributing employer or if you're a reimbursable employer that paid the fee to get requests for relief from charges. If the claimant indicates any type of issue which could affect their UC benefits, a request for information will also be mailed to the employer. This can include if there's a discharge or a quit, a refusal of suitable work, pension, 401k severance, independent contractor. All these forms are referred to as fact-finding forms. Excuse me. Getting into a little bit more depth with these forms. This is the one that I said used to be the yellow form, the UC 45, etc. It's used to request 4 different types of information. If you notice on top there, there's 4 boxes, and you're supposed to fill in whichever boxes are checked down here. So, they don't make you fill out the whole form if they're only looking for a certain type of information. So in box A are the wages for a 1-week period. We might ask that if we have a question. Maybe a claimant said they earned this much this week, and then they called back and said, no, I made a mistake. I earned this much this week. Well, now they've given us 2 different amounts for the same week. So we might want to verify that with the employer and say, hey, how much did they really earn this week, so that we know which one is correct. Part B is the total earnings with the last employer. This is the question that asks, did they earn 6 times since they started working for you? And a lot of times the date in this field can be could seem wrong to you, incorrect. And that date is figured off of what the claimant told us, and sometimes they don't understand the question completely, and they put in an inaccurate date there. So just know that this question is asking from when they started work with you until the work stopped, did they earn this amount? Okay. Now, if they had a long layoff, say they had a 3-month layoff before, well, from when they came back to work until now, did they earn this amount? Okay. Until the next layoff or whatever happened. So it's always from the most recent separation or most recent start date to their last day worked that we're looking for in that. Because if they had a 3-month period they were out of work, well, they might have worked somewhere else during that time. And if they haven't recently made enough to cover that 6 times rate, we might have to look back at why that they're no longer working there. Then section C is the reason for separation. Basically, the reason for separation is up top that the claimant gave us right here. And then this is your chance to provide that same information to us. If it matches, it's not a big deal. Everything is going correctly. But like I tell my son, I trust you, but I like to verify. It's a good idea to verify information. So if they said it was a lack of work, but they were really discharged, this gives you the opportunity to respond to us so we can start that investigation and get that determination written. Additional wage information. That's stuff like, are they going to be getting vacation pay for a period of time? Are they going to be getting a pension, 401k, severance? All that information is in this box, and that information can affect them, and we may have to do decisions on it, which is why we ask the information. Now, the deadline for this request form is usually 4 days, and there's a reason for that. And the reason is because if the reason for separation, if they said lack of work, but it's really a discharge or a quit, well, once we start paying them unemployment, we can't stop paying them unemployment until the determination is made. That's law. But if we've never made a payment to them, we can put a stop on their claim until the determination is done. And then once that determination is done, if they're eligible, we would pay out any weeks held. So if there is a difference in the reason for separation, please try to get it back to us as quickly as possible. Otherwise, you do have, it's not as important to get it back within the 4 days. You get it back at 10 days, that's fine. But if there is that discrepancy between what they said and what you're saying, those are the ones that are very important to get back to us as quickly as possible. Moving on to the UC 44-3. This is the financial determination that employers get when an employee of theirs files a claim. And that means they've had base year wages with that employer, and that employer is going to be charged a percentage of their unemployment. Okay, so there's some important parts to this. There'll be the date of application. That's the Sunday of the week in which the person filed for. So if they filed a claim on Wednesday because they were laid off Wednesday and then they filed their claim Wednesday, well, that date's going to be Sunday of that week. I had an employer call me once and said they filed before I even laid them off. How'd they know? And they did it. It's just we always backdate that date of application to the Sunday of the week in which they filed. The benefit year ending date, which is when that benefit year would expire. It'll give you the base year period. It's going to be from this date to this date. These are the wages we're looking at to determine their financial eligibility. And the last date for appeal. You can appeal this form if you disagree with something on it, if you think the wages are incorrect. It's always good to look at those wages and make sure they're correct for the simple fact that everything is data entered, and a decimal point in the wrong place can really change numbers. How much they're eligible for, what their weekly benefit rate is, and their eligibility code. You won't understand what that means, but it is a code we use. If it's a code 1, they're eligible. And then there's other codes that go along, one for credit weeks, one for that 37% outside the high quarter. So there's different codes that can go in there. I also do want to point out that in this middle section here, this is where the wages would be listed by quarter. Okay, and then the wages would be down here. So it's always good to take a quick look. You can tell if something's off, if it's like, 10,000, 10,000, 100,000, 10,000. Well, you might think a decimal point got stuck in the wrong spot in that quarter, or, they had a really, really good bonus. But usually things like that can be obvious. Or if there's no wages at all in a quarter and they worked that quarter, well, when those wages were being entered into wage record, maybe 2 numbers in their social security number got reversed or something, so those wages aren't showing up for them, in which case we would want to do an investigation to get that in. Another form we use is the UC-44FR. This is the relief from charges forms. It gives the employer an opportunity to file for relief from charges for separations that are not a lack of work. If it's a lack of work, that's what an unemployment's there for. You can't request relief from charges from it. But if the claimant quit or was discharged, or let's say they work full-time for one employer and part-time for you, and they're still working part-time for you and their hours haven't changed at all, well, you can ask for relief from charges because there is no lack of work where you from your business, so you shouldn't be being charged for their unemployment. And of course, under certain disasters, you can also get relief from charges. I do a full seminar on relief from charges, and in the future, if the chamber wants, I can come back and do that presentation to get into more detail. It is important, though, that on the back side of this form is the reason for separation. So if you are requesting relief from charges, please remember to fill out the back side of this and send it This actually goes to a Harrisburg address and not your local service center. So make sure you send it back where it's supposed to go. So to review briefly some fact-finding information, if there was a separation on a claim other than lack of work, we would do fact-finding. There are discharge issues. We have a list of them here: absenteeism, drug test, insubordination, refusal of overtime, etc. There's a lot of different little niches we have, and we have specific forms for each of those. And then we have other. And other is something that doesn't fall into all those other things. Sometimes they're the most interesting because they're something we haven't boxed up yet, so to speak. And then we have voluntary quit issues. They can be such as health, seek work, transportation, discrimination, relocation of spouse, voluntary layoff, and personal reasons. Personal reasons is like other. It's something that doesn't fit into a box that we've already created. Some other issues can include able and available, corporate officer, independent contractor, reporting requirements, etc. There is quite a few of them: severance payments, retirement pension, a lot of different things that we could be asking you about. And that's because those things can affect a person's claim, and it's something that we need to look at and possibly write a determination on. Just excuse me 1 second, I just have to take a quick drink. My throat was getting a little dry there. So how do we gather the information? Well, more than likely, we're going to conduct claimant fact finding first because, they're the one filing the initial claim, and that's usually where we get the first information from. But if for some reason they don't tell us about the situation, then as soon as we learn about it from the employer, we would then conduct fact finding with them. Now, to ensure timely determinations, and we do try to do them as quickly as possible, usually within 4 to 6 weeks, although we're running longer at this point because of the mass amount of claims we have at this time. When an issue is discovered, the UC examiner would contact the employer. They try to contact by telephone if possible, or we mail out a fact-finding form. If the employer is not available for the interview when called, forms can be sent by mail, fax, or email. These forms are time sensitive and they should be completed and returned as soon as possible upon receipt. They will have a due by date on them. If they are not returned by that date, the next day the examiner could write that determination even if you haven't sent in the form. It usually doesn't get written that quick, especially right now with our backlog, but it can happen. So who has the burden of proof? How does this work? Well, if there's a quit situation where the claimant voluntarily quit, the claimant has the burden of proof to show a necessitous and compelling reason for quitting. Once they show a necessitous and compelling reason, then it could switch to the employer having the burden to prove, the next step there. So let's take an example here with a quit. Let's say they had to take a leave of absence for health issues. Maybe they have a lifting restriction, can't lift anything over 10 pounds. Well, that is a necessitous and compelling reason for leaving the work. The doctor said they can't do this. They present that note to the employer. Did the employer offer them work within that limitation is the next step we're looking at. If not, they're going to be eligible for unemployment. If they did and then they refuse that, we have to go back and forth a few more times to write that determination. So on a discharge, the employer has the burden of proof to show that the claimant was discharged for willful misconduct in connection with the work. So what happened? They have to explain out what happened. So in this case, if we never got the employer's form back, did they attain their burden of proof? 98% of the time, no. Sometimes the claimant gives us enough information to prove that burden for you. I wouldn't count on it. So especially with discharges, you want to make sure you get those forms back, because that first burden is that you need to show that there was willful misconduct. Now, in either case, the UC Service Center will issue a determination based on the information available. If the employer or claimant does not return this form within the deadline, which is usually 7 days, the decision will be made based on all available information. At that point, an appealable non-monetary determination will be issued to both parties at the completion of the fact-finding process. Like I said, normally we like 4 to 6 weeks. We try to keep them within that time period, but right now, due to the amount of work we have, it is running a bit longer than that. Any questions so far? Alrighty, moving on to appeals. So once that determination happens, if you disagree with it, what can you do? Well, you can appeal it. If you appeal the determination of the UC Service Center, it would go to the referee. You can do that within 15 days of the date of the decision. Once the referee makes their decision, you can appeal to the Board of Review. This is a second level appeal, and you have 15 days from the date of the decision to do that. Once the Board of Review makes its decision, there are two options. You can ask for reconsideration, and you would have 15 days from the date of the board's decision to do that. Or you can appeal to the Commonwealth Court, which is a third level appeal, and you would have 30 days from the date of the board's decision to do that. There is appeals information available on our website. There's the UCP 18 and the UC 46A, the petition for appeal. And you can find either of those on our website if you had more questions about that. Or just type appeals into the search bar and it will bring up links for the different things. So what are some monthly notices that you may get? There is the Form UC 640, and this is the monthly notice of compensation charged. It's sent to covered employers to notify them of any benefit payments to former employees. It's also used to notify you if there's a credit issued to your account. Say you filed for relief from charges from someone and that was granted, you would see credits on there if weeks have already gone by where you were charged for them. So you can see either charges or credits on this form. Normally on this form, it would have the claimant's social security number, their name, what weeks we're talking about, and what your percentage charged was. And then if you got a credit, the credit would show up over there also. So it is a good way of keeping track. It's also like sometimes you might forget someone filed, but by reviewing this form, you'd be like, yeah, but they quit. I should have filed relief from charges. Did I file relief from charges? Well, if not, maybe you can still file for relief from charges for them. So, you know, it is a good bookkeeping thing to use. Also, if someone came back to work, but they filed for that week, you're going to want to notify us, hey, they came back to work and they worked full time that week, but they still filed for that week. Sometimes claimants get confused. They think if they didn't get paid a week, they can file for that week. But if they worked, even though they might not get their pay till next week or the week after, they're not supposed to file for that week. The next form is the UC 657. This form is sent out yearly. Okay. Basically, this form shows you what your tax rate's going to be for the next year. It's usually mailed at the end of the calendar year. If you're a new employer, this notice is mailed before the year ends. You can appeal this form if you disagree with it, but it just lists your rate and it's based on several factors. I don't understand all the factors because I don't work for tax, but there's a reserve ratio factor, a benefit ratio factor, a state adjustment factor. If you do have any questions about this, you can contact me and I can get you in touch with someone from the tax office that can explain it a lot better than I can. But if you do disagree with this, and I've had this straight from the tax guy's mouth, so to speak, if you disagree with it, appeal it. Because maybe you're waiting for outstanding relief from charges to come through, so this rate isn't accurate. You should appeal it, and that way, if anything changes with the relief from charges and credits, they can readjust your rate. So remember, you can appeal this, and you have 90 days to appeal it because it's a more complicated form, but appeal it if you do disagree with the rate you're being charged. And if you have questions, send me an email and I can get you in touch with one of the tax guys. Another form we send out is the UC 471. It's the employer questionnaire for quarterly wage verification requests. 471 usually asks for 3 months of earnings by day. You'll know this form when you see it because you'll go, oh my. Realize we do not send these out just to send them out. We send them out when we see someone's been filing for benefits while they've been working. And we send them out so that we can write a determination and say, hey, you worked this week and this is how much you earned. So why do we ask you for it for by day instead of by week? Well, your work week can be different than our claim week. Our claim week is the calendar week, Sunday to Saturday. Some work weeks might be Friday to Thursday. It just depends on what you consider your work week. So since we need it by our week, which is the calendar week, we ask for it by day because then we can go in, we can do the math, and we can figure out our weeks and do what we need to do to get that determination done. If your weeks match our weeks, if they're the calendar week, yes, you can do a printout by week and attach it, but just make sure to include that our work week is Sunday to Saturday and matches your week. Put that right on there, and that way we can use that. If not, if you can bring up a printout by day, yeah, you could send the printout instead of filling in all the little boxes. Just attach it to it and just put on the front, printout attached by day. And that way we can figure it out. If you don't send it back, we can't write a determination on these and we can't make them overpaid, even though they were filing and collecting unemployment at the same time they were working. So it is very important to return these forms to us so we can, stop fraud, which can increase the rate, which can affect how much you're paying in. So it all works together. There's also the UC 756, which is an employer inquiry notice. That would request quarterly wage information. It can be used for routine auditing purposes and also like if wages are missing from wage record, maybe, 2 numbers and their social security number got reversed and the wages aren't there. Well, we would ask for that quarterly wage information so we can enter it and get their financial determination corrected. There's also the UC 784, which is a weekly report of work and earnings request. It is also for a possible overpayment. It's that little block on the UC 45 where we ask for that 1 week. Normally, if it's only 1 week we're concerned about, that's fine. But if we see a general fraud going over quarters, then we would send out that UC 471 to you. And believe me, these forms are as much work for us when they come back as they are for you. So, new hire reporting program. The Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 1996 with PA's Act 58 of 1997, it requires all employers to report certain information on their newly hired employees. Originally, this was for child support because, to make sure that any child support is being deducted and is going to the kids. Well, because this started, we also use this now to tell if someone is still filing after they've started work somewhere. Now, the new hire reporting program asks for the hire date. Sometimes the hire date isn't the start date. So we would send out a form if we got this, if this cross match worked, and we would ask you when they actually started. Because maybe you hired them on a certain date, but you didn't start them till 2 weeks later, and they filed for those 2 weeks in between, but they should have because they weren't working yet. So we would ask you what the start date was and maybe for their earnings for the first few weeks there. Sides and Sides eResponse are web-based options created to simplify and streamline responses to UC requests. Some of you may use Sides, some of you may not. It is a way to get information to us quickly. So far, it's basically replaced the UC45 for initial information. We haven't used it going into separation issues and stuff. We still do those forms by mail. But if you are signed up for Sides, once someone files and your account number is referenced with that, we would send you an email that says, hey, you have work on the system. You'd log in and you'd answer some basic questions about that separation for that person. We also have something called the Shared Work Program. This can empower employers to retain a trained and qualified workforce during periods of slowdown and quickly ramp up operations without the expense of recruiting, hiring, and training new employees. Normally, if someone is working part-time, let's say they have a reduction of 10 to 20% of their earnings, they don't qualify for unemployment because they're still earning too much. But with the Shared Work Program, let's say you sign up for it and they have a reduction of 20% of their work, they can get 20% of their unemployment. We don't use the normal calculations for how we figure things out. I mean, we figure out their weekly benefit rate the same way, but they can't earn too much money to not get a percentage. So sometimes this can be a program in which you could maybe, instead of laying off 10 people, maybe you can reduce the hours of 20 or 30 within a unit. And then everyone's still working, so they're keeping their skills. Because I don't know about you, but if I'm away from a job for, 2-3 months, you're going to have to retrain me when I come back, unless I've been doing it a lot of years. So it tries to help with that. It is a different program and it runs differently than regular unemployment. If you are interested in information on that, you could either let me know or go onto our website and do Shared Work Program search and see what comes up. If you do have additional questions, you can always send them my way. But it is a different plan and it is unique in the way it runs. Any questions so far? Okay, so we're going to go into updates on, well, actually, this is about our website. This is what our current website looks like. It just has update on PUA and PUC claims here because it's a recent picture of our website. Anytime you go to our website, it'll pull up, some basic information, whatever's popular on UC. Our website is uc.pa.gov. If you're looking for something specific, click the search icon, the little magnifying glass, and then type in what you're looking for. I find it's the quickest way to find stuff on the site. You can just browse through the site. There is a lot of information on this website for people and for claimants or employers. So, please feel free to go in and look at our website at any point. Now, some employer contact information, and this is who you can contact in unemployment if you wish. The PAUC Service Center employer line is there, 833-728-2367. When you go in, it's going to ask you to choose either option 1 or option 2. Option 1 would be if you need relief from charges information, shared work program information, or any of the mandatory workplace posters. It transfers to the PAUC Resource Center in Harrisburg. If you select option 2, this is for separation, notice of termination, wage issues, credit week issues, and this would transfer to the PAUC service centers because they would handle that stuff. We also have something called Rapid Response Services, and I work with the Rapid Response Services. And this provides an early intervention services that assist workers and employers affected by layoffs, plant closures, or natural disasters. And they can be contacted at the email address there, RALIBWPO rapid@pa.gov. Rapid Response Services I work with, so I know a bit about it. We come out, let's say you're having a large layoff, downsizing, anything like that, and we give presentations to the employees on what to expect with unemployment, with the career link. We can answer a lot of questions that then they're not going to you for. So it is a very useful tool to use. Let us help your workers, at what can be one of the worst times of their lives. Okay.
Kathy, we did have a comment in the chat box.
Okay, I thought I saw something pop.
Yeah. They would love to hear the appeals presentation.
The appeals presentation. All right, well, we could set that up. But the thing is, I'd have to check with the referee's office because they're the ones that do that. And with the current workload, I don't know if they're available for the appeals presentation. But
Okay.
I can certainly send the referee's office a question and ask if they are.
Awesome. Just let me know.
Yeah, it's just because, with the current workload, a lot of the referees are working a lot of overtime. So, they might not be able to take them away from that right at this moment. But as soon as things quiet down a little bit, we could probably go back to doing those. Yeah, because that's not a presentation I give. The referees actually give that presentation.
Thank you.
But I will double check on it and see if it is available.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did finish that page. So also, this is some contact information for the employer charge section, relief from charges, and or your monthly notice of compensation charges. There's the address there for that, as well as the email uimpcharge@state.pa.us. You can use that email to send in your relief from charges forms, because I know sometimes you're trying to fax those in and the fax is busy, but you could just scan them and email them to the employer charge section, and they would process them. There's also a phone, the phone number there and the fax number for them. Did I see more questions pop in?
No, they just thought you had touched on it earlier, but again, it would be a great, follow-up later on.
Oh yeah, no problem. So what are the new programs? Used to be unemployment compensation. We pretty much dealt with 3 different programs: UC, Shared Work, and TRA, which is the Trade Act. Okay. But with COVID, we have included extended state benefits, PEUC, which is I go into them on other screens here. PEUC is a federal extension of benefits. FPUC was that additional $600 or now $300 a week. PUA, which is pandemic unemployment benefits. This is mostly for like self-employed individuals and individuals who didn't qualify for regular unemployment. And LWA was that brief term $300 a week that President Trump signed into effect during a period of time between programs there.
Kathy, I know you
Mhm.
spoke earlier about, not having to submit if you're, applying for jobs and interviewing. Do you foresee I think I'm saying this right, the FPUC, the extra $300, do you see that going away anytime soon, or do you think that will be extended as well?
The FPUC has been extended until September.
Oh, wow. Okay.
September 4th of 21 is when the American Rescue Plan is set to end.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
it has been extended through that until that point.
Understand. Thank you so much.
No problem. So what are the changes to regular unemployment compensation? Well, the first thing the CARES Act did was it did change some basic things. Basically, the need for claimants to serve a valid waiting week has been waived in the state right now. There is no waiting week. So there isn't a week that we hold before starting to pay out benefits. Currently, claimants are not required to register with the PA CareerLink system within the 30 days of filing their initial claim. And right now, they're not required to perform and record an active work search. Really, with our current claims load, we would not have time to even look at these. So, they're currently been suspended. Now, as far as the FPUC program goes, this is the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation. I use the initials so much, sometimes I forget what they stand for. We like to use our acronyms. So this program provided individuals with the $600 a week in addition to weekly benefit amounts payable from other UC programs. It was paid to individuals who collected benefits under the following programs. They could have either been on regular unemployment compensation, under PEUC, PUA, TRA, or the shared work program. So if they qualified for a payment under any of those programs, they then got the additional $600 per week and now $300 per week. Now, the $600 payment was paid starting April 4th of 2020, and the last week that was paid was July 25th of 2020. On December 27th, the Consolidated Appropriations Act was signed into law, and that extended the FPUC program, but reduced the amount to $300 instead of $600. And the first week payable under that program was January 2nd of 21. And the last week was March 13th of 2021, but they passed the American Rescue Plan, and that has now extended it up to the September 4th of 21 date. So, it is still going. This program is 100% federally funded, which means it isn't going to affect your rates at all. It's not being charged back to the employers. Another program is the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, or PUA. The PUA program allows states to pay up to 39 weeks of benefits to individuals who are not eligible to receive or have exhausted regular unemployment compensation, or Pandemic Emergency Unemployment PEUC program. The cost of the new federal benefit and program administrations are 100% federally funded. This can include self-employed individuals, individuals seeking part-time, individuals lacking sufficient work history to collect, or those otherwise not qualified for regular UC or extended benefits under state or federal law. Now, the difference with the PUA plan is the reason for their unemployment has to be related to the pandemic. If they are a seasonal employee and they were laid off in the normal season of their work and they're not financially eligible for regular unemployment, they're not going to be eligible for PUA. The reason for the separation has to be pandemic related in order for them to qualify for this program. Now, some other examples of individuals that can be covered by this program: sole proprietors, farmers, independent contractors, corporate officers, gig workers, a lot of musicians, etc., who, they're normally considered self-employed, fall under this. And of course, with the pandemic, there aren't many concerts going around right now or music at bars, so a lot of people are affected. Now, the base period to be utilized in computing the PUA weekly amount is the most recently completed tax year. So if they opened in 2020, we use 2019's tax year. If they opened up a claim in 2021, then we would use 2020. They also have to weekly self-certify for benefits, and that can be filed on the website. It is important to note that unlike regular unemployment compensation, there's no PIN numbers assigned to people. They have a sign-in that they set up when they sign into the program, a username and a password, and that's what they use to file their weekly benefits. So once again, December 27th, a new act was passed, the Consolidated Appropriations Act. This extended the PUA program for an additional 11 weeks from January 2nd to March 13th. The maximum number of weeks was increased from 39 to 50, and individuals receiving PUA during the week of March 13th who had exhausted, they could have claimed up till April 10th. But now with the American Rescue Act, this has been extended again and can go out till September 4th of 21. So sorry, I don't have the newest information right up there on the screen, but it's been happening the last couple of weeks and we've been incredibly busy just trying to get it implemented. Okay. So that new end date for this is going to be September 4th of 21. Now, the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, PEUC. This is a federal extension of unemployment. Just like years ago, we had extensions. Originally, it was 13 weeks. Okay, so that was the first part of it. It was 13 weeks of benefits, additional benefits to anyone who had run out of benefits on their regular UC claim. It also recognized that states needed to provide flexibility in meeting the actively seeking work, because the way we looked for work changed a lot, especially in with COVID. You couldn't go to places and put in applications because you didn't want to be going places you didn't need to. This is good for people who have exhausted all rights to regular unemployment compensation under state or federal law, have no rights to regulate UC under any state or federal law. They're not receiving compensation under the UC laws of Canada, and are able and available to work and actively seeking work. So we did look at that information. Sorry if I'm rambling a little bit. My voice is just bothering me today. So to continue with the PEUC, an individual is deemed to have exhausted his or her right to regular compensation under state law when no payments of regular compensation can be made because the individual has received all regular compensation available, and the individual's right to compensation have been terminated by reason of the expiration of the benefit year. If the individual can establish a new claim in PA or any other state, the individual may not continue to collect PEUC, but would have to go on that new claim. Claimants who have exhausted their weeks of regular UC benefits would go on to PEUC before being eligible for other programs. Now, the weekly benefit amount payable to an individual for PEUC would be the same as the weekly benefit amount on their original claim. The amount of the PEUC claim would be 13 times the individual's average weekly benefit amount. That has changed 2 times. And the state must identify individuals who are potentially eligible and notify them. Applications for PEUC can be filed on our website by clicking on File for PEUC. And PEUC payments, the very first week eligible was April 4th of 2020. Once we had the Consolidated Appropriations Act was signed, this all increased. The act increased the amount established in an individual's PEUC account to 24 times the individual's coverage. And then with the American Rescue Plan, that went up to 49 weeks times. So, they've extended yet again. Any individual who establishes eligibility for PEUC before the date enacted by this act will have their PEUC accounts augmented by an additional 11 weeks. And then the PEUC amounts may not be paid for any weeks that begin prior to the enactment, which was January 2nd of 2021. Individuals who have not exhausted PEUC within the week of March 13th, well, that's changed now, and we're back out to that September 4th of 21 date for PEUC because of that American Rescue Plan. So extended benefits, or EB, are state extensions. It's not a federal extension, but an extension by the state. This happens in Pennsylvania. It is based on the unemployment rate. EB is only payable for weeks of unemployment during an EB period and is only available to claimants who meet the EB eligibility criteria, including additional eligibility provisions that do not apply to regular UC. Now, our current EB period began with the week of July 4th of 2020, because that's when the unemployment rate went to the percentage necessary to kick this section of law in. An EB period ends with the third week after the unemployment rate declines to a certain level prescribed by law. Right now, we are still in the EB period because I have not gotten an email saying that we have gotten out of it at this point. An EB period has to last for at least 13 consecutive weeks, which it already has. So if at some point our unemployment rate falls below the threshold, they can discontinue that EB period and this program would end. The EB weekly benefit amount is the same as on the regular unemployment claim, including dependence allowance. And the total amount of EB payable is 50% of the amount of regular UC. So if someone qualified for a 26-week benefits on UC, they can get 13 weeks on EB. If they only qualified for 20 weeks on UC, they'll get 10 weeks of EB. Now, to be eligible for EB, a claimant must be totally or partially unemployed, have the total amount wages in the base year of the claimant's most recent UC claim be equal to exceed 1.5 times the amount of wages in the calendar quarter of the base year in which they were paid the most wages. So remember that 37% outside the high quarter? This is where EB is different. It has to be 50% outside the high quarter to qualify for EB. Have received the maximum amount of regular UC they were eligible to receive on their most recent UC claim, or their most recent UC benefit year has ended. Have received the maximum amount of PEUC that they were eligible to receive. Be ineligible for any other UC benefits, including PEUC under state or federal law, and not claiming benefits under the UC law of Canada or the Virgin Islands, and satisfy the requirements of being able and available for work. PA teleclaims, the PAT system is not available for EB claims, so they cannot file using the phone. EB claims can be filed through the internet system or a paper EB claim form for each week of unemployment. EB claim forms must be completed accurately and thoroughly and follow the mailing instructions. Claimants are required to report all work, earnings, hours absent, holiday pay, and or vacation pay when completing the EB filing through the internet claim system or the paper EB claim form. And an EB disqualification can be purged by being employed for 4 subsequent weeks and earning no less than 4 times the EB weekly benefit amount. The last one here is the Lost Wage Assistance, the LWA. Now, this program's never been extended or increased, but the LWA program provided $2.8 billion to give an extra $300 a week in additional funds to individuals that were unemployed. This was after that 600 stopped, but before the 300 a week started on the FPUC, and it was kind of considered as a supplement for that, but it was initiated under a different section of law, so it had to be done a bit differently. We couldn't just do it on the FPUC program because of the way it came and the source of the money for it. To be eligible for the LWA claim, you had to be fully or partially unemployed due to COVID-19, have a weekly benefit rate plus dependence allowance, if applicable, totaling $100 or more, and receive a payment each week from one of qualifying programs. And that program ran from August 1st to September 5th because that's how long the money lasted. So that was it was limited by the money amount that was brought into it. It was a set money amount. Anyone have any questions on anything? I'm going to try to pull up the, there we go. I always have trouble finding the chat. Anything in the chat? There we go.
No, nothing else. Anybody have any last questions or comments? This was great. Lots of information. Thank you so much again, Kathy. We appreciate it.
The email address you have there for me is wrong. It needs a C in front of it.
Oh,
so it's cvanvalen@pa.gov.
It's so weird because I copied and pasted it, but
yeah, maybe you missed the C on that copy and paste, but to let you know, it is C Van Valen. Yeah. So if anyone has questions or anything, they can feel free to email me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And I
no
hope
problem.
I hope your call volume goes down a little bit and things get back to a little bit of normalcy. And
oh, it would be nice, but I'm thinking probably we're going to be busy until September. So, and then we'll see.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. And sorry, my voice was kind of wonky today. The spring is bringing allergies.
Yes, I know. They're on their way here.
Oh, yes. But I'll still take the spring.
Yes, me too. Well, thank you again. And as everyone hopefully saw in the chat box, this was recorded today. And I do have the slides that I can send to anybody that would like them. So thank you all so much for joining us. And I hope you have a great Monday and enjoy this beautiful weather. Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.